and welcome to another episode of ECCB Connects. On today's episode, we discuss the Caribbean Digital Transformation Project, an initiative aimed at increasing digital access, jobs, and skills across our region. Project Manager Imran Williams shares more about how the project will impact the lives of our citizens. Stay connected, we'll share more with you after the break.
The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank is rolling out Dcash, the next step in the evolution of the EC dollar. Use Dcash to send and receive money to and from friends and family. Make payments directly from your smart device. Make payments from wherever you are. Download the app from the Google Play or Apple Store and sign up, or visit dcashec.com for more information. The future of the EC dollar is digital. Let's make history together.
Imran, welcome to ECCB Connects.
Thank you very much, Karina. Pleasure to be here.
Now we're here today to speak about the Caribbean Digital Transformation Project. It's a project that's funded by the World Bank on the largest scale, and regionally, the OECS Commission is responsible for the implementation. And I know that we have 4 OECS member countries, namely the Commonwealth of Dominica, St. Lucia, Grenada, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who are working to implement national components in their respective countries. Explain to us what the Caribbean Digital Transformation Project is all about.
The Caribbean Digital Transformation Project, the whole ethos of it is to increase access to digital services, technologies, and skills by the governments, businesses, and individuals across the participating Eastern Caribbean countries.
So as you said, it's geared toward broadening that access we have across the region. We know that we have challenges in our region and with digital access, and particularly it's become even more of an issue given the COVID-19 pandemic. Explain to us from your point of view, why is digital transformation important?
I'm happy you mentioned the COVID-19 pandemic, and you would recognize that because of this very pandemic, our education, almost the entire sector had to be moved online. And while online, you realize we have several issues in terms of the entire infrastructure. Namely, in the first instance, not all students may have had access to those devices. And I mentioned earlier on access to technologies. Not all students had access to devices. In instances where there are access to devices, you now had an issue of the reliability and the affordability of the broadband internet at home for those persons. And not only that, now you had a situation where you had to train some of the teachers to also use those devices and platforms to deliver our educational program. So this is where the digital skills component comes in as well. It gave us the ideal opportunity, or rather the pandemic exacerbated the need for that kind of digital transformation. Outside of just the educational sector, we saw a proliferation of pop-up kitchens in different households, persons now offering delivery services. While those may have existed prior, but we've never seen it that accelerated growth in that sector. So even in the industry sector, we got quite a bit of changes there as well. So the importance is, while the pandemic may have separated us, there was need for some business continuity. Many firms resorted to telecommuting. There was need to continue the education, the delivery of lessons, and the continuation of what goes on in the education sector. You now have persons speaking about the idea of delivering even health services virtually. That is, of course, basic health services, not the advanced levels. So it showed us that, notwithstanding the social distancing that was required as per the various COVID protocols, some form of life, some form of continuity had to take place. And the only way we could have achieved that was via digital means, virtual means. And it's the digital transformation that afforded that opportunity.
So in other words, the digital transformation has bridged or has it the potential to bridge that connection that we need to carry on regular everyday
There
to
you
the
go.
services, the education, the industry, as you said. And
Definitely.
COVID has just shown us that there's work to do in that aspect of our life. So how is the
Definitely.
project going to address some of these gaps that we've just spoken about?
Initially, you would have, in your introduction, you would have spoken about some activities at the national level in the Windward Islands, who are the IDA members, and there is a regional component. On the regional level, we're focusing a lot on the ecosystem, namely one, in the case of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank as a technical lead institution, we focus on what we call the digital financial services. So you would realize that in recent times, again, you have a lot of e-wallet type solutions, and the Dcash project, of course, being a perfect example. But you still have, outside of the central bank, you still have several small companies that provide those kind of services. The existing legislation doesn't allow for its supervision and regulation. So we're making some changes in terms of the laws that would allow for supervision and regulation of those type of solutions. Another key component as well under the ECCB is our survey. Many times you hear we speak about the unbanked, but can we say definitively the percentage? Of course, we can make certain calculations, but definitive survey that is owned by the region that we execute periodically that can give us an idea of where we are in terms of our financial literacy and inclusion. And we can measure it perhaps 2 years later, 4 years later, to see how the region is improving. Those kind of solutions will be delivered as well from the ECCB's end. From the Excel end, we spoke about the reliability and affordability for broadband internet service. In our region, we have some of the highest rates for broadband in the world, definitely in the Western Hemisphere and even in the world. So with the new legislation, it would allow for one to better monitor the quality of the internet service providers across the region, well, the member states for which Excel is the regulator, that is the 5 member states, and also allow for regulations that would deal with the pricing mechanism for the services being provided to the citizens. Now, what you realize, the more we roll onto the digital platforms, the more digital services that are extended by the various governments, you now have important issues of cybersecurity. You have important issues of data protection and privacy. To whom can you share data? How much data? In what form can you share it? Those issues become extremely important as well. So where that is concerned, Impact will be leading or is leading on the cybersecurity component of the project. The data protection and privacy is being led by the OECS, a joint venture between the OECS and the ECCB. Now, extremely important component as well would be that of the digital skills. This component is being led by the OECS at the moment, specifically the CBU unit, the business unit out of Dominica. One of the key features we recognize, even when the project was being developed and designed, many times we caught up in having simple training programs. And we, from day one, of course, the word from our leaders was that we cannot just be consumers of this technology as we move towards the digital economy. We have to position ourselves so that we can also be providers, right? And that is why for the digital skills component, the training program, we're looking at advanced digital skills. So we want for when an international firm or even a regional firm requires a solution, maybe an app development, maybe some coding being done for some software, the first place they think of is the Eastern Caribbean. And that is what we're trying to achieve with the digital skills component. Now, on a national level, you will have many of the project components that will be providing, in some instances, that is providing devices to the various students as well to assist with the continuation of the online learning. So this, in a nutshell, represents the 4 key regional institutions participating or serving as technical lead institutions under this project, and an idea of what their responsibilities are.
Imran, you thank you for fleshing out the components of the project, and I think of particular interest would be the digital skills development that you spoke about. Can you expound more on how, in tangible terms, how persons can benefit from this? How is this going to work?
So in the first instance, this component is actually two-tiered as well. We're now in the process of conducting what we call a digital skills needs assessment survey. So it will take the 4 participating countries and do a thorough examination of what are some of the digital skills needs for that particular jurisdiction. In the end, you may realize that digital marketing is an important tool. So for that country, you will have some training being done on digital marketing. The country will decide also how they select the candidates. It will be pretty much a scholarship being offered to the citizens. So the country will determine the selection mechanism and take those persons and take them through that training program. On the regional level as well, we now, with the assistance of the member states, will come up with a selection criteria, and then we'll determine, we'll give out the scholarship to those persons having been selected.
So basically what is happening at this stage is the assessment. We have knowledge that these gaps exist, but the extent to which you spoke about digital financial services, you spoke about cybersecurity, digital skills, the broadband and internet access. We know that there are gaps, but the extent to which these exist is what we have to find out first before we can work to address it. Now, Imran, what you've shared with us so far is, an excellent initiative and something I know that the people of our region are going to want to know more about. How do they get more information? How do they weigh in on the developments for the Caribbean Digital Transformation Project?
I'm happy you asked, because many persons have been asking for more information. And I'm pleased to announce that we're actually in the final stages of our communication plan that will not only reveal to the citizenry across the Eastern Caribbean the components of the project, but directly also how those components will be benefiting them on a personal level. I point your attention specifically, for example, legislative changes. Many times you may hear of a new piece of legislation being enacted, but persons do not necessarily understand or appreciate, or at least it's not explained all the time, how that piece of legislation would benefit them or improve their lives on a personal level. So part of our communications plan will seek to do that as well. So every legislative change that's been made would explain to the citizenry exactly how it's going to benefit them, as well as, of course, the other components that are like the scholarship for the advanced digital skills component that will have some direct benefits. But the communications plan will deal with all of it. We'll be rolling out in the coming weeks.
I think that's very important, that public consultation component, so to speak, because as you know, oftentimes you hear the feedback that something, a project, a system was developed designed for a particular group, but the group didn't get to weigh in on its development. And then so the desired impact is not realized because this interaction, this feedback mechanism was missing. So I think that is very important.
Well, we also recognize even when the feedback, as we receive feedback when a project was being designed and conceptualized, even while the project is being implemented, of course, we recognize it's very important for continuation in what we call in project management, stakeholder engagement. And the citizens are ultimately the key stakeholders in the entire process. They are the ones that are really going to benefit from it. So it makes perfect sense to constantly update them as to what the progress is on the project or whatever the intervention is that we do.
Right. Imran, thank you so much for sharing with us about the Caribbean Digital Transformation Project, how it is going to help to bring digital transformation to the forefront of our region and create bridges so that we can continue to progress and increase our space and influence in the world.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure. Anytime.
And now for this week's financial tip.
In these challenging times, it is important now more than ever to set financial goals and use them as your motivation. You can have small or big goals, but remember to be realistic about them. In that way, you will be more likely to achieve them.
We've come to the end of this week's episode of ECCB Connects. Thanks for watching, and be sure to join us next week for another program where we share with you who we are, what we do, and how we serve you.